All right. Hi, listeners. This is episode 5 of The Elephant in the Room, the podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Hanson, and today I'm joined with a very special guest, Amanda. Before we get into the questions, I do want to put out just a quick trigger warning. This podcast is focusing on the concept of sexual assault. And as a survivor myself, I completely understand how much weight this topic holds and how triggering it can be at times. If at any time during the podcast you feel the need to stop listening, I fully understand. I also want to point out that I will verbally read each question during this interview. So if certain aspects we discuss are triggering in any way, feel free to skip past those questions. My number one priority is to make sure that all participants and listeners of this podcast are comfortable and feel supported. So with that being said, I will turn it over to Amanda. Amanda, would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Amanda Carrier. I'm a police officer with the UW-Eau Claire Police Department. I've been here for 10 years roughly. And in that time have chosen to receive specialized training in sexual assault investigation, domestic violence investigation, stalking, and also strangulation investigations. I'm a graduate of UW-Eau Claire. I take a personal stake in the safety and the wellness of students on this campus, and preventing and educating about sexual assault awareness is something that's very important to me.
Great. That's awesome. Yeah, I talked with a couple other people on this podcast and they said that they were, had specialized training in this field. So I think that's kind of cool to know that you guys have so much background in it. So with that being said, I will jump into the questions. So first question is, how would you define sexual assault? And is there a UWEC Police Department established definition?
So we obviously are guided by Wisconsin state statute. And so we go by the statute. And so the definition that we use, and I wrote it down, I want to read it verbatim. Sexual assault is defined as a sexual contact or intercourse without the victim's consent.
Are there university police department policies put in place for students who have been accused of sexual assault?
So what university police, we obviously deal with crime. So there is criminal process. A person who is suspected or accused of sexual assault, obviously, we afford them all of the rights provided by the state statutes, as well as the Miranda rights that they receive. In terms of policies, we have policies that navigate how we investigate a sexual assault, but we don't have policies that are specific to how what happens to a student. So we obviously do interviews with the suspect. We usually do multiple interviews if they're willing to. We do a complete investigation. We talk to witnesses. We get past history. We will do search warrants, anything that we need to do to get a clear picture of what happened. And then we make a charging decision. We have a policy about the whole investigation, not just policies that adhere just to the suspect.
That lengthy process to make sure that you're getting all the facts you need before making a decision.
Correct. Yeah, we as a department are very, very focused on sexual assault investigations. No stone is left unturned, obviously. I mean, a sexual assault occurs and we're looking at history, data. We get search warrants for email accounts for location, Google, locations.
Sure.
Text message, anything that we can get our hands on, we will, to make sure that that investigation is done properly and that justice is found for the victim.
Yeah, awesome. What sort of support could the university police offer to a campus survivor of sexual assault?
Yeah, so personally, I always tell people who come in, we do have students who come in and say, I was sexually assaulted and I don't know if I want to report, or I don't know if I want to report to the police department. What does it look like? What are my options? And so I'm more than willing to sit down and have a conversation with people. And I'll give them my squad cell phone and I'll say, if you have a question, call me. If you want to talk, call me. I'm a person that I believe in communication and I believe in just listening sometimes. So in terms of resources, we have a lot of resources on campus. And we like to tell people about all of them, whether that's CASA, the Dean of Students Office, counseling services, housing. If, they're an on-campus student, we will get them in touch with housing. If they're like, I really don't want to make this phone call, I'll call whoever you want me to call. And resources don't often end there. Some people feel more comfortable using like the city resources. They have like crime victim witness advocates that will come out. And if that's what they want, then that's when I'm going to get them, because they're in control and they know what they need. I don't know what they need. We really try to stress that they're in control of what they want. And as much as we can help them and get them resources, we will move heaven and earth for whatever we can do to get the resources that they need.
Yeah, I think that's really cool too that you give them the option about any sort of university-based resources, but also out in the community too. I didn't know that.
Yeah, some people, feel more comfortable with on campus, and then some people don't. And so I think it's really important that they know all their options so they can make the choice that's best for them.
Right. As UWEC's campus police, are you allowed to disclose statistics to the student body and community about the instances of sexual assault? And if yes, what are those specifics?
So we have every year, the Department of Justice, we fill out an annual security report. I believe that it's emailed to the whole campus community. It's also available on our website if anyone's curious. And if they can't find it, I would urge them to get in contact with me, and I would be more than happy to send them the 2020 report. So the annual security report, basically, it goes through reportable crimes, and that includes annual security report recognizes forcible sexual assault and non-forcible sexual assault. And this encompasses university police, reported sexual assaults, as well as people who choose only to report to the Dean of Students Office. And then also people who report to the Eau Claire City Police if the assault occurs on the fringe of campus. And when I say fringe of campus, we go by the model of sidewalk, road, sidewalk. So if a sexual assault were to occur, say, in the roadway on the 200 block of Water Street, that's primarily Eau Claire Police Department's jurisdiction, but that crime data will come to us for the report. We usually don't find out about these sex assaults if they're reported to the Dean of Students Office. Students can choose to have them adjudicated through the Dean of Students Office and not even have the police department know about them. The total reports, I have knowledge about some of them, but not all of them, obviously. Sure. But the annual security report will tell those numbers. So I looked it up and I was thinking, so the University Police Department has had, so this is reported sexual assaults only to the university police. These are the only ones that we have been. So in 2021, so for this year so far, we have had one. 2020, we did not have any. 2019, we had two. And 2018, we had two. Okay. And that's as far back as the data went on that security report. So obviously, when you look at the annual security report, the numbers are bigger because it includes the Dean of Students Office and this. Right. But those are the statistics that I have on the sexual assaults that have occurred on campus property. I want people to be educated about the community, obviously, that they live in. If they have questions about any of the data, yeah, I'd be more than happy to have a conversation.
So if a sexual assault occurs on campus and it were to be reported, who is in charge of that investigation?
So it depends who the sexual assault is reported to. So if a student comes to our department and says, I'd like to report a sexual assault, that's our investigation. We investigate it fully. We either refer it or we decide a charging decision. We do the whole process. Mm-hmm. On the other scope of things, they can choose to report to the Dean of Students Office, and they may say, I don't want the police to know about this. I just want it to be adjudicated through a Title IX investigation. And that means that the Dean of Students Office, I believe it's actually Fritz, who does the Title IX investigation. So we may not know about those, but those are the two entities on campus that will be investigating and charging, I guess, for our intensive purposes, charging out a sexual assault.
Sure. So at any time, if it was just strictly to one or the other, it wouldn't be communicated between.
It can be. So we have had instances where the victim wants to report to the police department and also to the dean of students office.
Okay.
And we can work together to do the investigation, and dean of students office can use our report and our findings in their investigation as well. So the communication can happen, but it's up to them if they want us to know about it or the dean of students to know about it.
Okay. So if a student wanted to file a no contact request or restraining order against the perpetrator, would they reach out to the university police, and how would that process work for them?
So they can reach out to us. I also know, I believe that the dean of students office as well as CASA can assist in the paperwork. So the temporary restraining paperwork is actually issued through the clerk of courts, which is at the courthouse down on 2nd Avenue. They need to go there to get the paperwork. But we have had people come in and say, hey, I really need help filling this out. And we'll sit down and we'll help them fill it out. And if they have cases through our agency or through a different agency, we usually urge them to get copies of it and put it with the temporary restraining order paperwork. So then when it goes to a judge will decide whether or not a temporary restraining order will be issued. And if a temporary restraining order is issued, our department, we like to get a copy of it and we like to send it out to our officers. So our officers are aware that this TRO is in effect. And then there will be a date will be set for a restraining order hearing. And if a permanent restraining order hearing is granted, we also like to get our hands on that paperwork as well. So then we have all the paperwork we need. So if a violation occurs, the groundwork is laid.
Sure.
And, you know, having a good relationship and a rapport with people who have temporary restraining orders against someone, it's good, because then I think then they feel more comfortable to come to us and say, hey, so-and-so violated their restraining order. And the process is quicker because we have everything that we need.
Right. With that temporary restraining order, would that just stand until they had that hearing for like permanent restraining order then? Would that be?
Yeah. Okay. What it does is it gives you, you know, that short-term restraining order till then a judge can take more time to look at it and decide if a restraining order is in order. And then that's where all the research will go into of how long does this need to happen for? What are the conditions that this needs to happen? It kind of gives them more time.
Right. What type of training does the UW-EC's campus police receive regarding sexual assault? And can you provide the listeners with like specifics on that?
Yeah, sure. So we at the department, obviously, everyone is a certified law enforcement officer. So it starts out right in the beginning of the academy. It's a couple days of sexual assault investigation training. And usually that it rolls into domestic violence, stalking, strangulation, because the trainings get grouped together. So it is a couple days of good training. Our department is extremely proactive about finding training. I believe I actually looked up a statistic that I received from my lieutenant. And so we started tracking training hours 10 years ago, and from 10 years ago to today, our department has done 232 hours of sexual assault training.
Wow.
Yeah, so that looks a lot. Well, I've specifically taken multiple courses. I've gone to Rice Lake, to the campus up there. I have done training at UW-Whitewater for sexual assault violence. The forensic part of it. And then our department actually just did a mandatory, I believe it was a 4-hour training on trauma response and best practices in sexual assault investigations.
Okay.
So we're a department that we want to be well-versed in this. We want to be educated, especially as research and we learn about how people are affected by trauma, because every person is different. We want to know about this the best we can, because then we can tailor how we investigate it and we can be better each time.
Right.
So we're a department who really trusts training. We really encourage our officers to go to training, to seek it. And that's something that will definitely continue.
Knowing that it is so in depth, that is just comforting to know that too, and to make sure everybody is on the same page with knowing how to approach it if that were to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And you were saying that you had gone up to Rice Lake, UW Whitewater. Do all of you guys go to different areas, or is it just some of you that go to other campuses?
Some of it is by choice. Some of it is mandatory, obviously, like this last training that we went to. The training in Whitewater, I went to with three other officers, so four, including myself. We apply for it through the department, and then the department, can send as many people basically as we can either afford or we're allowed to because of the space. So we have that. But then, yes, also some of the training is mandatory. Like the last one, it was the chief sent it out and said that this is a mandatory training. Everyone is going to do it, and everyone completed it as well. And I heard nothing but good feedback, especially like interviewing and trauma response. I think that it opened a lot of our officers' eyes to some things that we all didn't know. And that's, the best thing you can hope for is that you just keep learning.
Absolutely. We kind of talked about this already, but could campus police investigate a sexual assault if that were to occur off of campus?
We have a mutual aid agreement with the City of Eau Claire Police Department. Usually, if we do, what that normally looks like is someone comes into our office and says, I want to report a sex assault. It occurred downtown or on the Water Street area, and I want to talk to somebody right now. And so we will take the initial interview, we will get the basic information about it, and then we will usually give that to Eau Claire PD, and they will do the follow-up in the investigation. The last thing we really want is to make someone recount a story over and over and over,
Right.
with different agencies. That's not something that our department or Eau Claire PD is interested in. So we try to minimize it. We will, if they are willing to wait, we will call somebody from Eau Claire PD and say, hey, we have someone in our office who wants to report a sex assault. Can you get one of your officers to come here now? And, they can come into one of our offices. They can spend as much time as they need here. But, we just try to minimize that. So the answer is we can, and sometimes we do, but usually if the assault occurs not in our jurisdiction, we do at some point pass it off to Eau Claire PD.
Sure. Okay.
Or the other, whatever jurisdiction it occurs in.
Right. And so like during that, if you were to pass it off, would they, refer back to you at all?
They could, in terms of like resources and things, I think that would be the most thing where we would get involved. The other thing that I think we would be helpful for is, so say you're a first or second year student and you live in the dorms and you don't have a vehicle and you don't know Eau Claire really well, and you don't want to go down to the courthouse. We will facilitate interviews. We will, facilitate in collection of anything that they need to provide to us. And we usually try to have those conversations multiple times about resources, and just like checking in and seeing how people are doing, seeing if we can offer them anything. If they have any questions about the process, that's usually where we get involved during the follow-up.
Sure. Okay. How does the campus police handle allegations of a sexual assault made by a student?
So what that looks like is we would have someone come in, obviously, and report a sexual assault. And we do everything we can to make sure that the person reporting has resources, whether that's an advocate or, would you like a friend here? Where would you like to talk about this? Do you want to stay in the office? Do you want to go, to your house? Do you want to go to a hall director's office? Where would you like to go? We really try to let them dictate where they feel more comfortable with talking about something that's sensitive like this. So we will do an initial interview. Depending on the time frame, we will talk to them about a SANE exam at one of the hospitals if it's needed. We'll do, evidence collection, the initial evidence collection if there is evidence, and then a large scale investigation occurs, and it involves usually every single person in our department, whether that's doing canvassing, pulling video footage, talking to friends, witnesses, past history, if it's maybe like a significant other, so they have a history, search warrants on electronics. We will get all of this together, and then obviously we will attempt to interview the person who's been suspected of the sexual assault. And if they're willing to have a conversation with us, then we will most definitely have a conversation with them. And then we gather everything of the investigation, we look at everything, and then we decide whether or not to charge this person. And a lot of times too, we will send everything to the district attorney's office and we will talk back and forth about what we think is appropriate for charging. And so the district attorney's office as well has an opinion on that. So it's a very large process. It can be rather daunting. We try to give the person as much control as possible about, when they want to have conversations, what time, everything like that. And we try to be very open and we try to be very communicative of why we're doing the things that we are going to do. So there's absolutely no question. I'm a person that I will go over things 6 times with people. I don't care. If you have a question, I want you to ask, because you went through this trauma and I don't want you walking out that door with any doubt in your mind that I'm not fighting for justice for you.
Yeah. And I think too that you want to limit as many times as that person needs to talk about it, because it is hard to revisit that. Say if the person that was suspected and they weren't open to coming into talking with you guys, what would you do then from there?
So obviously they have a choice of whether or not they want to come in and be interviewed and make a statement. If they're not willing to do that, then that's documented. And that's all the more reason about why we work so hard in our investigation is, I don't need a statement from someone saying either, yes, I did it, or no, I didn't. I'm going to let the evidence follow to make my decision, my charging decision. So yeah, that's just why we work even more harder to do the investigation.
Are university police officers present if a disciplinary hearing is held here on campus? And what about when a hearing is taken to court?
So a disciplinary hearing, no, we don't have anything to do with Title IX investigations.
Okay.
In terms of a criminal hearing, it depends on what type of hearing it is, but usually with a preliminary hearing, a motions hearing, or a jury hearing, yes, we usually are. Someone from the department is subpoenaed and we end up testifying, usually on behalf of the state.
Sure. Okay. And then last question, are there any campus hotlines available for survivors of sexual assault?
Yes, so there is one that's particular to campus. It's 836-HELP, and it's connected to CASA. I would also mention as well that 211 and Northwest Connections as well. 211 and Northwest Connections, I don't know if you know, but basically it's a 24-hour hotline for people experiencing some type of crisis. And, I'm not going to define what crisis is for people. So they also do involve, if you are, a victim of a sex assault, you need to talk to somebody now, you can call 211 and Northwest Connections, and they can talk to you about the trauma and what occurred, and decide if you need immediate resources, but then they can also connect you as well to other resources. And then obviously CASA on campus is a fantastic organization. I think they're currently in Hibbard as well, and we've worked really closely in the past with the heads of CASA as well. So 836-HELP, and then also Great Rivers 211 and Northwest Connection.
Okay, that's awesome. So, Amanda, I cannot thank you enough for taking time to be part of this podcast. I'm so thankful that we were so willing to provide insight for the listeners and just provide them with stats and everything that you could. Do you have any closing comments you would like to add?
I think just that, for students, on campus or off, if you do experience sexual assault and you're unsure of what to do, or you're not sure about reporting, my door is always open. Every officer in this department, the door is always open. Even if we're not going to be the one investigating it, I am more than happy to sit down at any time and just have a conversation. And if you want to ask questions about what the process looks like and what the hard things are and the feelings associated with it, any type of question, please don't ever hesitate to not stop into our office. We're located on Upper Campus in the Crest Wellness Center, first floor. Just swing in. All of our officers are great. We're all trained in trauma response, and we all really care about this community and the students that are on it. So if you have any questions ever, please don't be afraid to swing in or give our office a call. I'm more than happy to answer it on the phone if you're not super comfortable about meeting face to face.
So this has been the final episode of the Elephant in the Room, the podcast. Thank you to everyone who has listened, and I hope that all of you have enjoyed learning about this information as much as I have. And with that being said, I'm your host, Natalie Hanson, signing off.